All right, well, we're almost right back on schedule. And Iffy, you really are good. Well, you really are good. That's great. This section is about telegenetics, and you were meant to hear from three of us, but Dr. Flannery had to leave early, so you'll hear from Rena and myself. So I wanted to update you on telegenetic activities in the region and what we've been doing. So really the year one goals were to do an assessment, and as the National Telegenetics Work Group had planned to do a national survey of activities, we simply worked with them on that effort and were able to pull out the SERGG or SERGG specific data from the National Registry. So this year we worked very hard on developing and testing and then implementing a survey on telegenetic activities around the country. Additional activities which we had been doing and are continuing to do, which I think are really useful to many people, are the Lunch and Learn series, where you can, in time synchronously, listen to a lecture from another state, if you will, or even look at those at another time through the SERGG website. But let me tell you a little bit about the data from the telegenetic survey. The goals of this were basically to look at who is using telegenetics, how are they doing it, what are they using in that, and what are the services supported by. So this online survey was sent to all members of the ACMG, the National Society for Genetic Counselors, NSGC, and Society of Inherited Metabolic Disease members by email. There were 10 questions. We tried to keep it short and sweet as much as we could. And the open survey period was from May to June of this year. So the data I'm going to show you is just very rough and first pass, but it's interesting nevertheless, I think. And in a way, this is a follow-up to a survey that we did back in around 2007, which was never published, but looked at some of the similar aspects. So in terms of the total respondents, we had 233 respondents overall nationally. That's out of over about 1,700, so that's not a spectacular response rate, but there you have it. We got responses from all states in SERGG, but we didn't get responses from the Virgin Islands or from Puerto Rico. Again, you didn't have to be doing this survey to be responding. The national survey, as I said, got 233, and we were 31 of those respondents. So mostly just to show you, you don't have to look at the detail of this slide, but to show you that at the bottom line, you can see the type of institution that the respondents came from, whether they were an industry or private center, university, what have you. And the vast majority, as might be expected, were in a university setting. So did you perform telegenetics? The blue bars are SERGG, and the red bars are all respondents or the national response. And we had about 38, 39% of the respondents in SERGG say that they did do some form of telegenetics. And that compares pretty similarly to the 2007 survey, where about 44% of the national group said they did do some form of telegenetics at the time. So what sort of personnel were at the remote site? So, you know, at the site where the service is being provided, not where the patient is. And the vast majority have genetic counselors at that site, so that tells us something about what they're doing. They're obviously not doing physical exams and comprehensive medical examinations. The funding sources were interesting to me and surprising. Maybe that's just because I'm from a poor state, but about 55% or so of the respondents in SERGG said that they were supported by private or third-party payers. And so that's interesting. A very small number had state funding, and in fact, there was no federal funding at all in this from the SERGG region. In terms of the method of delivering service, the most common in SERGG was this desktop computer video conferencing system. So these days it's become so much easier to video conference with someone. You can obviously do this with a laptop and not have to have a dedicated system. Other methods were telephone only. Presumably that was more than just a telephone call, but hard to tease out from this survey specifically. And frequently there were dedicated video conferencing systems in a genetics unit where they had obviously spent then some money on this. So we've got more data coming on that, and you'll see the final summary of that once we've cleaned up the data and looked at the whole survey. But I think it's interesting to see how similar SERGG is to the national level, and that there's still a great number of centers that are not using telegenetics of any sort that might be able to be used for lots of the problems we've already been talking about this morning. The next year coming, we have a number of things scheduled, and we intend now using this information from the SERGG region to develop a web-based inventory of services, which we can tie into the SERGG website, which is so beautiful, showing where it's happening, how maybe even to get in touch with that system if you want to interface with it, and what the state-based reimbursement characteristics are, because each state has some differences in the degree to which reimbursement can occur, for instance, through Medicaid and those sort of systems. We also want to identify 3 telegenetics practices which are currently ongoing and develop the outcome measures in those institutions, those centers, so that we can begin to track the effect we're having. And then looking for new opportunities and new places to start telegenetics, because I think the vast majority of places are not using telemedicine or telegenetics. And I think that there's a great deal that can still be done with that.